In a world that's always racing forward, sometimes we need to slow down and reconnect.
Connect genuinely, broaden your perspective, and share your passion.
Bonafide dialogues, where authenticity, creativity, and passion merge.
Welcome to Bonafide Dialogues.
Anastasia Boyko is a legal futurist and product evangelist at Filevine. She has spent 20+ years innovating in the legal ecosystem. After practicing in corporate tax in New York, she moved into operating roles in legal innovation and the business of law at Practical Law, now Thomson Reuters, Haynes Boone LLP, and Axiom Law. Taking best practices from innovation in the business and practice of law, Anastasia created innovative programs in legal education as Assistant Dean for Leadership Programs at Yale Law School and Chief Innovation Officer at the University of Utah S.J. Quinney College of Law. Her expertise spans law practice management, legal services delivery, lawyer training and talent development, lawyer leadership, change management, and legal innovation. Anastasia received her JD from Yale Law School and her BS from the University of Utah. Anastasia is also a member of the Utah State Bar Innovation in Law Practice Committee.
You came to the United States of America from Ukraine as a child, and growing up in an immigrant family, how did it shape your character?
Yeah, I thank you for having me, first of all. I think there's no way to avoid that experience not shaping you. I think as a young child going into a brand new environment where you don't have community, you don't have family, it's a new language, it's a new system, new norms. I feel like that experience more than anything sort of built a sense of adaptability. I often say that I'm pretty good at being a chameleon as I go into different environments. But having to adjust and see how people will respond to you, knowing that you are different, is an experience that many people who grow up in the same place that they are born don't have, right? And it's one that I think I've carried with me both through growing up in Utah and in the United States, and then going into a very different environment at Yale, where there's a whole other set of norms and expectations in that environment to get used to, and then going into the legal profession, which has its own set of norms and expectations that you have to adapt to. So I feel like it's been very much a career and a life of adjusting to what the circumstances are around it.
Yeah, in my opinion, adaptability is one of the most important skills, if you can call it a skill, right? Somebody said that not the smartest, not the strongest survive, but the one who can adapt.
It's definitely a good survival mechanism. And I think for those of us who came to this country as children or as adults, it is one that you sort of learn by necessity.
What age did you immigrate to the United States?
I was 8.
Oh, you
So
were
I had
8.
I had just finished 2nd grade and have ample memories of growing up in Eastern Ukraine.
And where exactly are you from?
I'm from Donetsk.
From Donetsk. And it must be difficult for you to see what's going on in Ukraine right now.
It is. I mean, I think from as you talk to child refugees especially, you don't necessarily have a sense of home, because part of your heart grows up in one place and part of your heart grows up in another. And so I think especially for anyone who's left a country that goes through challenges and strife and conflict, the concept of never being able to go home again is a strong one. And I definitely have that, right? Like where I grew up, many of the buildings are no longer there. It is currently occupied by Russia. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back and see many of those places, or if the places that are important to me still exist. And I think that becomes very difficult when you think about being able to go home, or at least reconnect to a piece of your identity.
And do you still have family in Ukraine?
I do, yeah. We have extended family there.
And they're safe?
As far as we know, yeah.
That's a very sad situation. Let's hope this war will end as soon as possible. So today we would like to talk about legal careers. I think this is such an important subject because of so many changes related to legal tech, artificial intelligence, and our law schools are still teaching this old curriculum, and the world around us changes so fast. So how do you connect these two worlds?
I think it's interesting in the sense of many pre-law students have a sense of what they will do after law school, right? Law school is a tool toward a specific goal. The challenge is that you don't really know what you're going to do in the legal profession until after you've gone through law school. And very few people who have a specific goal in mind end up graduating and doing the thing they came to law school to do. I actually wrote my thesis in law school about that sort of like misguided approach that many law school students take, including myself, because we just don't know what the practice of law is until we get underneath it. And then when you look at how law schools are set up, the pedagogy is very dated, to your point. You know, we're still sort of teaching in a 1970s style pedagogy, and law school tends to be fairly theoretical with limited opportunities for experiential learning, depending on the school that you're at, and what is available there. And so I think what that ends up creating is law students will come in with some idea, they'll get some exposure, and then they either get overwhelmed with the options available to them or get pressure to go in a specific direction, whether it's a law firm, whether it's going into government work or public interest. I think there's a great deal of pressure on law students to make decisions around their careers based on their debt burden. And so there are a lot of nuances embedded in that decision-making process. And we don't necessarily do a very good job of explaining what law school is to folks before they start, because in their mind, they see it as a step to something else they have in their mind for their careers. And so I feel like now there's so many different things to do. And like I've told my students when I was at Yale, right? Like the things that are shown to you are maybe three or four of the 100 things available to you. It'll take you some time to find those things, just the way that we've set up career services and the way that we show available options to students and where they're directed by faculty and administrators and just general social pressure. And like I said, potentially financial pressure, but many do find their way. You know, I think we had a statistic that 10 years after law school, 20% of our alumni at Yale were in business. And I think that was a pretty artificially low number because I think as a moment in time measure, I think a lot of people iterate and try different things in their career. And so part of the challenge is figuring out, ideally before law school, but also during law school, what it is that you want to be doing with your unique skills and talents.
And you're talking about Yale Law School. Of course, these students, they usually have many options, right? And they need to make some decisions. But many law students graduate from law school and they don't have many options. It seems like, for example, in San Francisco Bay Area, it's very hard to find a job for law school graduates. So it depends on the law school, right?
It depends on the law school, and I think assumptions around Yale law students having options are also not necessarily accurate because those options aren't
Mm,
necessarily the options that they want or the options they came to law school for. So yes,
interesting.
in the sense that they will have options to have a job, um, but I don't know if they're necessarily taking the job of their dreams. And from my anecdotal discussions, oftentimes they're choosing a path of least resistance, right? Or a
Hmm.
path where they feel some pressure to choose that from various people in their lives. But that's not to diminish, you know, the challenges that many other law school graduates have who attend law school and then may not have options for a job and are working with a high debt burden. I think this is as I talk to students thinking about law school, I mean, the financial piece should be a large consideration, as far as what you're willing to take on, because it's not only tuition and fees, it's opportunity cost. I happen to believe that a legal education is a really valuable education in critical thinking and communication skills. And as we're diving into the world of AI, it seems like the thing that differentiates us from machines is critical thinking and communication skills, judgment, right? Like a lot of the characteristics that now allow us to show, what is human and what is machine are the kinds of skills that are taught specifically in law school. So I think there is an opportunity there, but that doesn't mean that decision should be made in a vacuum outside of job prospects and sort of the debt burden that you'll be taking on.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned AI. And what I hear lately, people say it's fine that AI will be just a tool helping lawyers to have accomplished more on their everyday basis. Let lawyers do their work and let the AI automate some of the tasks that lawyers spend too much time on. For example, in e-discovery document review process, at some point it will be replaced by AI. Those lawyers that work on these document review projects, I don't think they will be able to find jobs. There are not that many available jobs as we have e-discovery attorneys out there. So I think it will create an issue of finding a job
Yeah.
for these attorneys.
So I take issue with this debate because it ends up being fairly binary, and oftentimes lawyers lack imagination when they look at new innovations and disruption coming into their field. And I find that when there's something new or disruptive that comes into our profession or into the world at large, we look at what we're going to interchange it with, right? So now a machine can do more e-discovery. I don't need a lawyer to do e-discovery. When what we should be doing is pulling up and asking, what should the practice of law look like if we're
Mm.
focused on client service and value add? And then how do we structure it now that we have new tools to be able to be more effective? But what I keep seeing people doing is looking at the exact same way we've always done things and then said, well, what part of what we've done before is the AI going to replace? But let's stay in the same container, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really make sense, right? Like it's not a design thinking approach to it. It's like, what do lawyers do? What is the value of what we do? What do our clients need from us? And how do we set up a system to be able to deliver that? Versus, well, this is the structure we've always worked in. There's a bunch of new stuff. So what can we switch out with the new stuff? And then we lose jobs. And so like it
Yeah.
just to me seems like a very it's a very low level conversation, especially
But
compared to
that's
the
what
one
is
that
happening
we
right now everywhere. That's what I've
for
been
sure,
seeing.
for sure. But this is why I think strategic business leaders and organizational leaders should look at their organizations and see what is our mission, what are we trying to do, and how does the technology merge with the human expertise that we have to be able to deliver on our mission, like period. But what we're doing instead is just trying to switch out facets of it. And that's not like an effective approach, right? Like I think a lot of people are used to seeing law as a leveraged pyramid. And they look at the bottom and say, all right, well, the associates they're doing sort of the time intensive work, and the partners are doing less work, more strategic work, business development, right? Like, and the reason why we have so many associates is because there's so much work to do. And that's a way that we have done legal services in the past, right? If our mission is to help our clients with their disputes, help counsel them to get ahead of things, what does that look like from a service model now that we have these tools, right? Can I put in AI agentics to be able to look around corners for me and tell me when certain updates come up, or tell me when there are certain discrepancies, to look at the data I have around my clients and help me gain insights that I can give to them as advice, right? Like now that I have these resources, why am I not using those resources?
And really getting to know your client, right? Because I think this
That's what it
is,
all comes back to. Yes, that's what it all comes back to. All it's funny because I'm reading all of these conversations about what does technology mean, and I've spent my career around not just legal technology, but around how we shift the way that legal services are delivered. Right? How do we train lawyers? How do we set up our law firms? How do we do business development? How do we manage our practices? How do in-house lawyers deliver services to their business partners? Right? How do they work with outside counsel? Like all of this is fascinating to me, but the conversations all go back to, all right, what are the basics of service delivery? What is professional services? And what do our clients want from us? And those things are still the same. It's just that now we get to deliver that cheaper and faster. And then we have to decide how we want to charge for it.
yeah.
Because the billable hour may not be the best option right now. And we've talked around alternative fees for 20 to 30 years now, right?
Yes,
We have a
hopefully it will
conversation around that.
change. Yes.
We have a conversation around that. We've got tools to be able to aggregate and review and analyze data, right? Like all of that is there. But fundamentally, the conversation about what does AI mean is a conversation about what is your mission and how can you now deliver on that mission, given that you have new tools.
That's right. And I think this is one of the points that you just mentioned, which is, I think, very, very important, that we're so stuck in our old ways in billing practices, right? In the way we're doing business, all of this, how do we even push for that change? You know?
I mean, in many ways, AI, right? So I think this is what's fascinating. If you look at the data from the last few years that we've had different generative AI tools, more and more people are using AI for personal and professional development. And it used to be, that we would have use cases that were very subject matter specific and data specific. And we're trying to recreate lawyers. But to me, the most interesting use case is exactly this question of like, how do I get more curious? How do I look at other delivery models to see what we could do better, right? We're not the only professional services
Yeah,
delivery model, right? We've got management consultants, we have accountants. Like we can look at other models and see how they've delivered services and how they've priced services and how they've been able to figure out how to meet client needs.
yeah,
So I think that like even just for lawyers to pull up and ask a simple question of, hey, review all of the surveys out there around client satisfaction with lawyers. And what are the priorities for clients when they work with their lawyers, right? Like that's a simple pull
mhm,
of
yeah,
data. And now that we have these incredible tools that are able to aggregate all the data in the world and tell you what that looks like and synthesize it for you with clear bullet points. What I keep hearing over and over in the last 2 decades is clients are frustrated that their lawyers don't understand their business, right?
exactly,
They're
exactly.
not business partners with regard to the law. They just call in response, answer questions. Oftentimes there's a frustration around the timing of response times, right? But like if we could set up a system by which you could query some of the common things around your client needs and reach out proactively, that's a very different ecosystem.
Exactly. That's interesting because I have been always thinking about this specific model we have in place. Then students graduate from the law school, they typically want to go directly working at the law firm, right? And in 5, 6 years, some of them become partners and some of them work in-house. But to me, it would make more sense if they would first work for the company and then work at the law firm. So you at least understand how companies operate, you need to know the insights. After that, you can actually focus on your client, then you have better understanding of their internal operations.
Yes, and again, those are 2 out of 100 options, right?
Yeah,
Like we love to focus on, yes, many lawyers will go into a law firm after they graduate. In many schools, that's the majority of students. Like I said, oftentimes that is following the herd, and that is very much a function of financial pressure for many students,
yeah,
right? More and more in-house departments hire students out of law school, and that's cyclical. So 10, 15 years ago, there were legal departments who were hiring straight out of law school. 10, 15 years ago, there were financial institutions who are hiring straight out of law school, right? Financial institutions deal regularly with regulations and compliance and have a need for someone who understands how regulations work, how regulatory frameworks operate, how to critically think, and how to communicate. And so there are always a lot of non-traditional paths
Mhm.
available. It's just that the one that's easiest is the one that we put in front of people. But yes, for some people, it is better to go into a company and then potentially into a firm. For some people, it's better to skip a firm altogether. For some
Yeah.
people, one firm is better than another firm. For some people, a regional firm is better than a big city firm. For some people, a boutique is better than a large firm, right? So like there are so many options even within the practice cohort. And we haven't done a very good job of understanding, well, we understand them, but we haven't gotten underneath and explained to law students the nuances of all of this decision making because they are very much functioning through information from each other, limited information from the administration, limited guidance from online, and they're trying to put together pieces of a brand new world without many context clues, without really thinking about who am I? What are my unique skills? What am I talented at? And what do I want to do for money? All of those things can be different, right? But you have to go through the exercise of figuring out who you are, what are your strengths, where do you want to apply them, and where do you want to apply them for money, right? Like
Exactly.
those are different layers of questions. And when we lose all of that nuance and all of that psychology by saying lawyers are going to go to law school and then you're going to join a firm or you're going to go to the government or you're going to go into public interest and then you might go in-house, right? Or you might go into any of those things that I just named. But those are the only musical chairs that you can move around in. And it's just not true, right? Like for us, we have to pull back and look at the skills that we're teaching students in law school, but more importantly, students have to actually do the hard work of self-reflection to figure out what they're uniquely good at and figure out what they want to be able to do for a job.
Yeah, and many, many lawyers, especially young new attorneys, are depressed. They're disappointed with the actual picture of their everyday lives, and the studies show that there are approximately 30% of lawyers struggle with alcohol abuse and so many depressed attorneys, which is not good for them, which is not good for their clients and their families. So why do we see this happening over and over again? And just generally speaking, if you look at the general population, there's 6-7% of people struggling with alcohol abuse, and in the legal profession, we have almost 30%. So it shows that there's something really wrong with this situation. Why so many people disappointed with their choices? Why so many dissatisfied people in this field?
Yeah, I mean, this is a complex area, but the data doesn't lie, right? The rates of mental health challenges, the rates of substance use disorders, the rates of suicidal ideation are exceptionally high in our profession to a rate that if those harms were existent in any other profession, that profession wouldn't be deemed safe to do. Right.
Mm,
But we are saying it's safe to do. I think fundamentally this comes down to the core of to be a lawyer, in many ways, we have to decapitate our minds from our bodies and our hearts. We are told that we are supposed to think about reason without emotion, and we are here to support and guide and advocate for our clients
yeah.
without any regard to our feelings or our well-being. I think with the advent of technology, there's now also no time for recovery, right? There's no time when you are not reachable. And so I think the way that we teach lawyers to ignore their bodies and ignore their intuition um, is a lack of integrity, right? Like you're out of integration with yourself. And anytime that you're out of integration with yourself and your values, there is moral harm. I was recently at a well-being conference and it's just sitting with me and I can't stop thinking about this idea of moral injury.
Mhm.
when there are values and our principles are out of sync with what we're doing every day, right? Like your heart hurts and your body is trying to reconcile this disintegrity because you have a job. You told you should be grateful and thankful that you have a job, that you're a professional, that you have a fiduciary duty, that you're helping people. But we really haven't done much to help people prepare for what is very much holding a container for trauma for many people, right? You're oftentimes in conflict. You're
You're
oftentimes
always in the
helping
middle of the
people,
conflict.
right?
Yeah.
You're helping people navigate very difficult conflict laden situations. Lawyers themselves tend to be fairly combative with each other, I think, as a function of our profession. There's this constant dialogue about like how can you disagree without being disagreeable, right? Or how can you be civil to the other side? And I was like, well, we have not cultivated emotional intelligence in law school, right? The skills that get you into law school and the skills that make you a really good lawyer are oftentimes not the skills that make you a very good manager or a very good teammate. Simultaneously, we have not given lawyers the benefit of developing their sense of self and naming and being clear on the principles that they stand for, helping them understand how to create and keep boundaries, right? Helping to build a profession that allows people to have a well-rounded life. And
I like
notice I'm not
that.
saying
Yeah.
balanced, right? Because balance
No,
is a
well-rounded.
red herring in some ways, right? But well-rounded life. And this is where I think technology can play a huge factor because slowly in law school, we lose a sense of self. As we become young lawyers, we lose a sense of self. There's more and more pressure. We become more and more narrow in our day to day. We spend less and less time in community and with family. And distancing ourselves from those things that are fundamental for human happiness is why we end up where we end up. But we also have a fiduciary duty, right? We are there to represent our clients. And we find a lot of value and valor in being our client's representative and seeing the importance of that work. But what we don't realize is that if we are at the simultaneously hurting ourselves by not taking care of ourselves, by not sleeping enough, by not getting exercise, by not drinking plenty of water, right? By not eating well, we can't actually be good servants to our clients,
Right.
right? We can't actually do that work in furtherance of what we say is important if we don't take care of ourselves.
But you do. Maybe you can share your experience. I know you teaching yoga, right? So you have this balance and you're a well-rounded individual. So you can actually share your personal experience, how you build your life, and you're managing all these different areas of your life, your career, family, and how yoga helps you to stay positive and happy in your life.
Yeah, and it's not even just yoga, right? It's any movement practice that allows you to get some distance from the factors externally happening and allows you to dial in and see what's happening in your body, right? We don't really have a lot of moments in high pressure, stressed environments to pause and be like, huh, am I anxious? Am I angry? Am I scared? Like what is happening? What is the underlying emotion? How can I talk myself through that emotion instead of being in my, reptilian brain that's just reacting to the situation that is there? And especially if you're someone who was born in trauma, right? Grew up in trauma and was trained in a traumatic kind of environment, like there's going to be a circuit in your brain that's going to have a subconscious reaction to all of the stressful things that are going on. And you're probably not going to be reacting to them well. So yeah, so what are the fundamentals? Sleep.
Sleep.
Getting plenty of sleep is fundamental. I know that I am not well when I have not slept. If I am stressed out, I don't sleep. If I'm scrolling too much, I don't sleep, right? If I'm looking at too many screens, I don't sleep. And so you have to set up a space for yourself where there is a comfortable space where you can sleep, where you are not distracted by screens, where you give yourself some downtime before you go to bed. So the last
You
thing you
need
see
to
isn't your
have this
phone.
evening routine, right? before.
You set up a
It's
routine for
okay, go to
yourself.
bed at 10, but you won't be able to fall asleep because, again, for many attorneys and other professionals, it's very hard to turn off your brain and stop thinking about it, about your client and the email you have to send first thing tomorrow morning and about your meeting and on, right? So you have to have this evening routine where you prepare yourself for bed, then you put away your phone maybe an hour before your bed, maybe you go for a walk, maybe you get some fresh air in your room, right? Get some warm
Yeah, I mean, like
tea.
I think people have to understand that in many ways, like lawyers are cognitive athletes, right? And as an athlete, you need to take care of your mind. And rest is a fundamental piece of taking care of your mind. And so a lot of what you're doing as sort of a cognitive athlete and is figuring out how to manage that energy that is affecting your brain and the way that your brain is affecting your body. So you work it backwards. If you can't stop thinking late at night, make sure that you have a pen and a pad next to your night table and just write down your thoughts and leave them there, right? Like they're not going anywhere, but you can address that in the morning. So if you're worried that you need to remember to do something, just write it down on a pad next to your bed and deal with it in the morning. If you know, as the research backs up, that looking at screens before bed is stressful and hard for yourself to wind down, have a policy where you don't look at screens for 30 minutes to 60 minutes before bed. So what do you do in that time? Well, maybe you read, right? Maybe you
A
just
book,
lay with
yeah.
your eyes closed, right? I feel like I forgot how to read after I went to law school. Like I stopped reading for pleasure. And
Mm,
there's a lot of value in reading for pleasure. And
yeah.
maybe you don't have the cognitive bandwidth to read words. Maybe you get a beautiful book of art prints and you look at something that inspires you. Maybe you read poetry, right? Like it doesn't have to be Proust. It doesn't have to be dense novel-like things. It doesn't have to be research studies. It might be because that might be what you're excited by, but find something that can give you that kind of creativity and a different space for your brain to be. So I think that's a big piece of it. I think having some sort of morning routine also, where you have time for yourself, that might be 5 minutes, right? I don't have children, but for folks who are raising children and have other caretaking obligations, you may not have much time in the morning. But if you can carve out at least 5 minutes for yourself to be alone, to think, to meditate, to reflect on what you want your day to look like before you
Mm.
pick up your phone, it's super valuable. Just that 5 minutes to be able to start your day. And then throughout your day, make sure that you're getting up and moving around. So sitting at your desk the entire day is very bad for you health wise.
Very bad.
Plenty of research. Like I don't have to explain it. Look it up, right?
Yeah, they
Like
say it's
so
worse
get
than smoking.
right. It's very, very bad. So make sure that you're getting up every hour and a half, to stretch. That can be 5 minutes, right? That can be 2 minutes. It doesn't really matter. Make sure that you've got plenty of water around you so that you're keeping hydrated. Oftentimes we forget about the most basic thing, which is water, to have around you. It also forces you to get up because the more water you drink, the more bio breaks you're going to take. So there are ways to just sort of create these little mini hacks in your day to day. Also, if you're having stressful events and you feel like you're overreacting to something, go for a walk outside, right? Close your door for a minute. Identify the feeling that's happening for you. Maybe you write it down in a journal. Whatever it is, right? Like there's a way to hack a lot of this stress. And instead of saying, I don't have time, you do have time. We all have time. And you can decide what's a priority for you. And for me, going to bed at a decent hour is a priority for me. Getting plenty of sleep is a priority for
Same
me.
here. Yeah.
Exercise, right, is a priority for me. And so I need to be able to be either at yoga or in the gym or running or going for a walk at least 4 times a week. That's a
Mm.
baseline non-negotiable for me. And I may not get to have the workout I want every single time, especially if I'm traveling a lot, but I know it needs to be 4 times a week for me to be mentally okay. Because my body being in good health and good working order helps my brain. And what I sell is my brain, right? Like my brain is what sustains me in my career and in my life and allows me to show up for other people. Another big piece of this is human connection.
I just was about to say that. Yes, human connection. It's another piece of
Human
it, right?
connection, right? Like we're lonelier than we've ever been. We are further away from our villages and communities. And so it's really important to identify and create those spaces for human connection. At work, it means having normal discussions with your colleagues like they're human, right? Like, how often are we talking to our colleagues about something other than what we're expecting from them or what they're expecting from us? The best way to have great relationships with your colleagues is for you to have mutual respect,
Absolutely.
right? And mutual understanding. And you might find out that somebody is carrying a lot more stress than they're letting on. And you have an opportunity to help or at least reframe how you're seeing how they're showing up. So definitely like treat and interact with everyone you work with like
As a
they're
human
humans and
man.
you're all part of, yeah, that you're part of something. And then finding, like we have various connections with our families and making sure that you spend time with your families and make time for quiet, device-free time with your families or time outside with your families or discussing what's going on in their lives. It's creating a third space, right? So for me, yoga is that third space where I have a community of people who I gather with and see on a regular basis and catch up with and do a shared activity with. For some people, that's a spiritual practice or an organized religious practice, right? We all have those things. We have volunteer opportunities. These are just ways for us to connect with other human beings in joint mission and purpose to realize that we're not alone, right? Everybody's sort of going through the challenges of being human, and you get to share best practices. You get to laugh about things. Maybe you get to do it over a meal. Maybe you get to create a meal, right? Like these are things that have proven to be really good for our sense of self. There's a great book called The Power of Meaning, and it talks about the four pillars of meaning in human existence. And one of them is belonging. Like we need to feel like we belong to a group. It's in our biology. It's how we survived.
Yeah.
And so if we don't continue doing that, or if we feel
Yeah.
that that belonging only exists through a screen, we're
Yeah.
missing a fundamental piece of our
Yeah.
existence,
We feel
right?
more
A second,
disconnected every
we feel
single
more
day.
disconnected, right? And that is sort of where we find ourselves when we're high stressed brain workers.
Yeah, and people
Secondly,
work
like it,
remotely. You have to meet in person. You have because it's energy transfer. You can feel it, right?
right. It's like we saw what happened during the pandemic where many of us were in isolation. And it like for me, I was on my own.
Mm.
And I wasn't living near family. Everything had shut down at the university. Everything had shut down in the state, right? Like I didn't have spaces to connect with people day to day. And it had a huge mental health toll as a result. Like we need that. So what I'm saying is all of these little tiny, what seem like pedestrian ingredients are really the ingredients of a healthy life.
That's true.
Right. Just like you put carrots, onions, and celery to start a recipe, like you need some fundamentals to be able to have a happy, meaningful life. And the information is out there, right? Like this is why I keep saying that technology is part of the solution. Lawyers are oftentimes scared to admit how depressed they are, or how despondent they feel, or how helpless they feel, right? They don't want to go to other lawyers because oftentimes those other lawyers aren't a safe space for them,
Hmm. That's
right? Because
true.
of what we've created. We've created a culture of competition
Mhm.
where trusting in your fellow lawyer, that person may actually use your vulnerability against you. And I think this is where technology is a wonderful tool to be able to talk through some of these fears and concerns, ask for tools, right? Ask for what the research is to be able to feel more connected to others, how to find community. And some of this will take iteration. Great, it might be a run club, and then you realize you hate running. Great. Or you don't have time for it, right? Or you might like yoga, or there's a walking group in your neighborhood, right? Whatever it is, start
I
experimenting.
like the fact that you mentioned that you need to be able to process your emotions because it seems like many lawyers just bottle it up, but you need to, like you said, you need to name your emotion and then process it. Like you said, maybe write it down, think about it. It's okay to feel certain way, but we just put it away, sweep it under the rug, and then And
there's
then
been some really
depression.
Yeah, there's been some fascinating research. I recall an article in New York Times a couple years ago where, it was talking about the fact that we oftentimes think the body is there to support the mind, right? It's the thing that carries the head. But our bodies actually have much more intuition and knowledge than our minds.
Mm.
And so if you look at a lot of the science around this, it's in many ways our brain is processing and supporting our bodies. And our intuitive body is able to absorb a lot of nonverbal, non-cognitive signals about what's happening in our world, what's happening energetically in a dialogue, right? How our body is reacting to all of the things in the air when something bad is going to come, right? Like there is a research around this.
Mhm.
And what we've done instead, especially as lawyers and other people in very high pressure environments, is say, like, we need to figure out how to make our bodies stop giving us signals, which
Mm.
is absolutely the worst thing that we can do, right? Our body will keep us safe. Our body will give us signals when we need to slow down or we need to speed up or we need to exit a certain situation, or when somebody we're talking to is dangerous or untrustworthy, right? Our bodies give us those signals.
Yeah.
And so it is if we are not listening to those signals, you're right. They will bottle up and they will explode at some point. And this is why when I tell law students, you need to spend part of law school figuring out who you are and what you want to do with your unique skills and gifts, because you will have that reckoning and it will likely happen at a much more consequential time. It might be a separation or divorce, it might be the death of a loved one, right? It might be the loss of a job. That will force you into that kind of conversation. Who are you? What are you here to do? And if you do it sooner, you'll be much more grounded in those principles as you navigate your life. And it is likely that you will not get as far away from your core self as to need to spend a lot of time to bring yourself back, right? So do it when the stakes are a little lower and when you can ask these questions and explore, because you will have to have the reckoning at some point, but it will likely be a much harder one.
I have to say, your students were lucky to have you around. Maybe at some point you have to go back at least part-time because I can hear now how much value, how much wisdom you shared with them. And you built an amazing leadership program. Maybe you could talk a little bit about it and why it is so important for lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, lawyers are leaders, right? Lawyers are the people who understand how the system works. They navigate people through those. If you look at our history as a country, you look at presidents, you look at legislators, you look at policymakers, local, federal, right? Like you see that many of those people are lawyers, and that's not a coincidence. Those are skills that are really valuable and have helping to navigate systems and have helping to manage and organize people. And so I had been very actively involved as an alum after I graduated from Yale, and I had spent a lot of time with students. I had volunteered on our fund board. I had done organizing for our reunion classes. And we had a new dean who had come in, and she was looking at the idea of lawyers as leaders, right? Because lawyers can be lawyers and lawyers can be lawyers writ large. But the skills that are needed to serve in whatever role that you take on are similar, right? We need to figure out how to build professional skills that are oftentimes taught traditionally in business school. There are some basic career pathing skills that are necessary. There are some financial literacy skills that we don't always embed in law school. And so she had charted me with the mandate to figure out what's missing an already robust program at a top school. And so I had sort of reflected on my own experience as I had done in every single pivot in my career. And as I've gotten to know alumni over the years, then I embedded myself into the student experience as it was then when I had come back a few years ago. And then I talked to more alumni again about what was missing from their experience in law school. And I don't think that you are going to graduate and be a leader, but I think you can teach some fundamental skills of effective, good leadership while you're in law school. But I think a lot of it has to do with interpersonal relationships and emotional intelligence, which is something that we don't spend a lot of time helping people do. But as a foundation, you have to have a sense of self. You have to understand yourself to be able to steer yourself in the right direction for contribution. And so there are plenty of things that I added that were just like practical, right? So let's add some emerging issues courses on topics like AI and policymaking, right? And add capstone courses around specific practice areas. Like, what does it mean to lead an in-house? And having someone who has been an in-house leader for a long time sit in a seminar with students to talk about some of the gray areas of decision
Share
making.
their experience.
Right, share their experiences, right? So I think those are some that you can add emerging issues courses, you can add financial literacy courses, you can add courses that synthesize what the experience might be like and what kinds of decisions you would be facing in the future. But that's a piece of it. And I think the professional skills are something that law school should do more and more of, because anyone who graduates a graduate program and goes on to work with other people needs professional skills, right? They need to know how to work on a team. They need to know how to give and receive feedback. They need to understand negotiation. They need to understand public speaking, right? There are just some like basic fundamentals of skills that anybody who picks up the Harvard Business Review is going to be seeing because they're working in a corporation or in a large organization or around people. So I think those are fundamental on things that we've neglected in law school. And the way that I had embedded those were more of the sort of projects and workshops throughout the experience and around things that our law students are already doing, right? So if you start a clinic of some sort, doing some sort of workshop around teamwork and giving and receiving feedback is really helpful because you're going to be doing that in real time just then. And then the third pillar of what I had put together was really around career pathing. And so we had added specific programs around private sector leadership and public sector leadership. We have a lot of folks who graduate from Yale who do non-traditional things, whether right after law school or soon after law school. And so we wanted to be able to have a path for those people, whether they wanted to go into management consulting or finance or entrepreneurship, innovation, right? And to have direct mentorship from alumni to build specific skills, put together cohorts of people who've done unique private sector things to sort of accelerate that path forward as to what
That's
they
great.
want to do. Similarly, with public sector leadership, a lot of our graduates end up using the Yale Law degree as a public policy degree. And so there are a lot of folks in the public policy world and government and think tanks and nonprofits who can help them think about how to find the right path forward for them in public sector leadership. But what's interesting is like a lot of the things that I'm talking about as far as skill sets are transferable in the public and the private sphere, right? So I had a faculty member ask me, why would we need any sort of financial literacy for someone going into public sector leadership? And I was like, well, do you have a budget that you're going to be dealing with, right? Do you have to understand research and projections, right? These are all just, they're tools to analyze information, and you can use words or you can use numbers, but having a facility with numbers and having financial literacy is something that's going to help you whether you're in the
It's
public
so
or the
important.
private sector, right?
It's even unbelievable that they're not teaching it, you know,
Yes, right, again,
logical that we
and
should be able to have those
yeah,
skills.
I think every law school should, but again, if you look at the way that law schools are set up, very many of them are focused on those 2 to 3 paths that we discussed at the beginning versus pulling up and asking like, what is our mission? Is our mission to build the future leaders of tomorrow? Are we going to try to graduate ethical decision makers who can help navigate their communities toward prosperity? Like, what are these big picture mission goals? And then each law school can tailor their programming around that. But right now, just like in the legal profession, right, we set up the way the container looks and we're trying to interchange pieces of it instead of lifting up and deciding what is our mission? How do we achieve that in this new world with these new tools with a different kind of student, right? The current student is not the same student that was there 20, 40 years ago. They think differently. Many of them are digital natives. Their brains are wired differently. Their priorities are different. And so I think it behooves every organization to pull up and ask, what is our mission? And how do we look at the people and technological tools that we have to be able to achieve that mission?
Degree. What else can you do with your law degree?
We don't have an hour to discuss that, so that's a
No,
whole
we don't
other
have an hour.
conversation.
But maybe
Um,
I think
I
maybe the
will.
best way to go about it, maybe you can share your career path because it was so unique.
Yeah, sure. I'll also point out that the law school application numbers are an all-time high,
Mm,
and law student JD placement job rates are an all-time high. So I feel like this fear about that not being the path doesn't seem to be the case. That also oftentimes
that's good.
correlates with any sort of financial market insecurity that people have. And so oftentimes I'll go to graduate school. I look at my career through a lens of operations. So I started practicing law because I wanted to work with people and help people. But then I wanted to do more financial work. So I went from trust and estates where I was helping people directly to corporate tax where I was dealing directly with financial um, uh, investment management firms who were helping their clients invest money in various creative ways. And from there, I saw that I was much more interested in how law firms operated than I was in the day-to-day work of lawyering. And so I had gone into a legal tech firm that allowed me to look at how lawyers learn and by default, how we train lawyers, and then how do law firms operate generally, right? How do law firms practice? So that was sort of the beginning of my understanding that I like operations and
Mm.
logistics, and thinking about the big picture and the different pieces that fit together. So I've worn sales hats, I've worn business development hats, I've worn marketing hats, I've helped to manage practice groups, I've helped to run business development and marketing for law firms. I've helped to run recruiting and talent management for an in-house talent provider, right? And now I work on developing new products and helping to shape go-to-market strategy. So for me, it's communication, right? Of what is effective communication? How do I frame things for a customer? I understand the legal customer quite well because I was a lawyer and I've worked around lawyers for a long time. I also like good product solutions for the day-to-day of what lawyers do. And so I think all of those themes are really about finding the kind of environment you want to work in and the kind of problems that you want to solve. So there is no easy answer because the answer, as I said at the very beginning, is figuring out who you are, what are your unique skills and gifts, and where do you want to apply them? And that's
So,
very much person to person.
so how do you look at your career now, looking back? Do you think it was a search for something, for that perfect career for you?
No, I mean, I look at it as iteration. Every single decision I made, I did the best I could given my understanding of myself and where my interests were and what options were available to me. And then I assessed, right? Like, does this work? Does this not work? Should I be doing something else? And then I pivoted.
I like seeing that people have such unique career journeys. You work in different roles, in different environments, because some people just graduate from law school and work for the same law firm the entire life, right?
Yeah,
But
and look, and there's a value in that. Again, that goes back to who are you? How do you like to work? Where do you want to take your skills? I find that people who have had portfolio careers like mine are particularly useful in change dynamics like the one that we're going through right
right,
now, right? We're
space
going through a
environment,
systemic
yeah.
shift. And we have to look at the entire system and see, like, all right, what's working, what's not working? How is this new thing going to change what we're doing? How do we restructure what it is? Because we've seen it from every single perspective. That doesn't mean there isn't value in the person who stayed in one role and gained a lot of expertise and gone really,
In that
really deep.
specific field, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're complementary skill sets. It's why I don't think that law firms do particularly well when they have people who are just subject matter experts in one particular practice area, then take on the responsibility of managing a law firm. Because those are completely different skill sets, right? Now you need to understand how to manage a business, whether or not you've had any business training. Now you need to learn how to manage people. It's a whole other skill set, right? 85% of managers say they hate being managers. Most people
Mm,
don't enjoy managing other people. And so again, like there's a time and a place and a
yeah.
role for all of those different skill sets, but you have to yourself figure out what that is. I would highly recommend StrengthsFinder. Gallup does an assessment called StrengthsFinder 2.0, that's been lauded over and over in the Wall Street Journal and other publications. Law firms use this. It's a way to help figure out what are you uniquely good at, and then what kind of roles that particular strength is valuable in, as well as sort of blind spots of that particular strength. and the kinds of people you should partner with to be like an effective team. So I think like as a practical first step, like I would encourage everyone to take StrengthsFinder to get a sense of their unique skills.
This is what I wanted to do, to highlight all these options. You can have this unique career path as you did, or you can just find this one place and stay working at the same company all your life. But there's so many options for you as a young person graduating from law school, because many people find themselves lost. What do I do next? What are my options?
Yes. Yeah. So instead of asking, what are my options? You should ask, who am I? What are my unique skills? You
Yeah.
have to redirect the question. And this is why I think that we as a profession have failed so many people, because the question they keep asking is, what are my options? Okay, right? Like you have a lot of options. You're spoiled for choice and you're overwhelmed by all those choices. But you're not going to choose very well if you don't know who you are and what you want to do.
Many people don't even see those options
Right.
because they think there are only 2 or 3 options out there. And I couldn't get a job, for example, at the law firm. I send out 100 resumes, no reply. I have all the student loans. What do I do next? People get depressed. So I loved having this discussion because you're showing that there's so many options. You can apply your law degree to so many different careers, and your
Yes.
skills and knowledge that you developed over those 3-4 years will be very helpful, useful in so many different positions.
Correct.
Yeah, this is the problem, because so many job descriptions are so unique that people think, no, I don't match this, I don't match this, I don't match that. But I think it's very, very hard for people to actually find that fit. Where do I
Yes.
fit? Where do I belong?
Yes. But you have to figure out who you are first. It's the wrong direction, right? It's the wrong approach to look at what is available and how I fit myself into it versus figuring out who am I? Where do I want to be?
Yes, no, thank you so much for this discussion. And I usually ask my guests at the end of each episode about their hobbies and what else you like to do outside of work. And we already touched a little bit on your hobbies. You said that you're doing yoga, you like going for walks and running. Is there anything else that brings joy to your life?
Yeah. I mean, I love being out in nature. So hiking, visiting national parks, taking road trips. I love listening to great music. Really, I love looking at art, right? Like I like to find inspiration in the things around me.
Wonderful. And what does kindness mean to you?
Kindness means to me putting yourself in other people's shoes and understanding what they're going through and trying to treat them accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.